The river is wide, and the road stretches long. Since the break of dawn I've been walking. Her music, though my feet are heavy, my heart remains strong. Hold on to the glory. Tour struggles after emancipation. Following the Civil War, black families across Georgia were declared free. Yet in Augusta and its neighboring towns, this newfound freedom felt hollow. Lacking land, money, or protection from hostile whites, many found life unchanged. White landowners swiftly mastered the art of using contracts and deceit to bind freedmen to the very plantations where they had once been enslaved. In Richmond County, families believing they were building new lives discovered they had been duped into inescapable agreements. Judges and sheriffs consistently favored the landowners, inventing debts where none existed. The cost of seed, tools, or food was added to a mounting account that a man was forced to labor off. Women were also ensnared, often bound to domestic service in conditions mirroring slavery. By 1915, a generation of black children had matured under this shadow of liberty, bearing the heavy truth that the law offered them no protection. The dream of emancipation survived in church meetings and whispered prayers, but the daily reality remained harsh, unfair, and perilous. The emergence of Jim Crow. By 1915, Jim Crow laws had a firm grip on Georgia. These statutes ensured African Americans in Augusta understood their place in white society. Streetcars had segregated sections, schools were divided by color, and even public water fountains served as daily reminders of their inferior status. The right to vote was effectively nullified. Poll taxes and literacy tests silenced black voices at the polls, proving equality was an empty promise. Augusta, a city known for commerce and culture, bore this heavy contradiction. In taverns along Broad and Green streets, white men laughed freely, while black men faced beatings for the slightest infraction. A young black man could be jailed for vagrancy, simply for lacking employment papers. Once imprisoned, he might be leased out to local farms or factories, forced into brutal labor. These weren't merely rules, they were instruments of control. They empowered landowners, sheriffs, and businessmen to treat human beings as property, decades after slavery's supposed end. In this world, taverns became stages for displaying power, where young black lives could be bartered away like tokens in a cruel game. Economic exploitation. By the early 20th century, most black families in Georgia were ensnared in the sharecropping trap. On paper, it was an agreement: the landowner provided land, a mule, and seed, while the family planted and harvested, with profits to be shared at year's end. But in Augusta and across Richmond County, this system was merely slavery disguised. Landowners inflated the cost of tools and food, charging double their worth. When harvest came, debts always seemed to exceed the profits. Families working from sunup to sundown ended the season deeper in debt than when they started. Young children joined their parents in the cotton fields, dragging sacks nearly as long as themselves. Women hoed the soil with babies on their hips, never finding rest. Many men were tricked into signing contracts they couldn't read, binding themselves and their families for years. Any attempt to leave was met by sheriffs quick to enforce the landowner's claim, often dragging men back in chains. This cycle of debt and broken promises made freedom feel like a bitter joke. The people in Augusta's black neighborhoods knew they were legally free, yet economic chains held them as tightly as the iron ones of the past. This reality set the stage for even darker abuses in the city's taverns. Taverns as hubs of power. In Augusta around 1915, taverns were more than just drinking establishments. They served as gathering places for the white landowners, merchants, and politicians who controlled the city's economy and laws. On Broad Street, amidst the daytime bustle of commerce, these taverns came alive at night with smoky air, loud laughter, and deals whispered over beer. Behind the swinging wooden doors, decisions that shaped entire communities were made. Land disputes, labor agreements, and even criminal cases were casually discussed at tables. For the men inside, a tavern was a private courtroom, a trading floor, and a playground all in one. Black workers rarely entered except as servants, carrying trays or cleaning floors, forced to witness their futures being decided without them. Some taverns gained notoriety for a darker purpose. Stories spread of young black men and women being used as bargaining chips in card games or bets on horse races. A teenager could be offered to settle a debt or handed over to another landowner with a simple handshake. The outside city saw only the lights and music of Augusta's nightlife, but inside those smoky rooms, human lives were reduced to mere tokens. For black families, the knowledge of what transpired in these taverns added a heavy layer of fear to their daily existence. They understood their already fragile freedom could be stripped away in a single night if the wrong men made a deal over a drink, dehumanizing transactions. Inside the Augusta taverns of 1915, the most shocking reality was the reduction of young black levs to objects. To white landowners and businessmen, a boy of 16 or a girl barely grown was not a human with dreams and family, but a form of payment. Debts, wages, or broken promises could be settled by offering a black youth as currency. The cruelty was casual, hidden behind laughter, games of chance, and drunken conversations. For the men inside, it was entertainment, a display of their power. A simple card game could end with a teenager being handed over to another man, who would then use that life for farm work, household labor, or worse. These transfers often occurred without the young person's knowledge until they were taken. Families were powerless to stop it. Mothers and fathers who worked the fields could do nothing when a white sheriff or merchant claimed their child had been won or traded. The practice echoed the slave auctions once held in public squares, but now it happened in private, hidden behind the doors of broad street taverns. The community whispered about it, but open talk was dangerous. The message was clear: their lives could still be bought, sold, or gambled away, even 50 years after emancipation. Corruption and complicity. These crimes didn't survive by accident, they were protected by a web of corruption. Tavern owners in Augusta knew what was happening within their walls, but profits kept them silent. Local sheriffs, often drinking alongside the landowners, chose to look away or directly participated, enforcing the transfer of a young black man as if it were legal. Judges and city officials, dependent on these same businessmen for political support, ensured no accusations ever reached a courtroom. The complicity extended beyond law enforcement. Bankers extended credit to landowners who openly boasted of controlling hands as if they were assets. Merchants supplied taverns with goods, ignoring the darker dealings in back rooms. For black families, this wall of silence meant there was nowhere to turn. Reporting a crime to the police was useless, often resulting in punishment for the victim. Communities in Augusta's black neighborhoods, like those near Sand Hills or Turpin Hill, lived under constant threat. They knew if a child was taken, the entire system would stand against them. Lives in captivity. For the young black men and women traded in Augusta's taverns, life after the exchange was a form of captivity mirroring slavery. Handed over in a deal, they were taken to outlying farms or forced into houses as unpaid labor. Many were teenagers, their futures stolen before they could build one. A boy sent to a cotton farm in Burke County might spend his days under the burning Georgia sun, working from dawn until after dark with only scraps of food. A girl sent to a wealthy home in Richmond County faced endless cleaning, cooking, and the silent fear of abuse. Escape was nearly impossible. If a young person tried to run, local sheriffs were quick to return them, sometimes whipping them publicly as a warning. Without legal protection, these children became invisible property. Families who lost a son or daughter carried the wound silently, knowing protest could bring violence on the entire household. For the victims, days blurred into years, their lives dictated by men who believed they owned them. The illusion of freedom was shattered, replaced by the cruel reality that a life could be taken in a single night's card game. Resistance and whispered outrage. Despite the fear, black communities in Augusta did not remain entirely silent. In churches scattered through neighborhoods like Bethlehem and Harrisburg, pastors preached coded messages of resistance. Hymns sung during Sunday service carried double meanings, words of biblical deliverance that also spoke to the hope of earthly freedom. Families gathered after dark in small wooden houses, sharing whispered stories of the taverns, warning others to protect their children. Mothers taught sons to avoid Broad Street at night, and fathers organized quiet watches when rumors of another exchange spread. These acts of resistance were small but carried deep meaning. Open resistance would have brought swift, brutal retaliation. White mobs in Georgia had lynched black men for less, so resistance lived in whispers, in secret prayers, and in the determination to pass down truth. There were also brave individuals who fought back. Some fled north to cities like Philadelphia or New York, sending letters home about a different life. Others risked everything by hiding runaway youths. Still, the cost was heavy. Families caught helping could lose their homes, their jobs, or their lives. But even under such danger, the outrage burned quietly. The memory of injustice was never erased. It lived in the songs, the sermons, and the determination to endure. This silent defiance kept alive the hope that one day the truth would be told. A hidden reality in 1915. In 1915, Augusta was known as a thriving southern city. Broad Street displayed busy shops, carriages, and the growing presence of automobiles. White residents celebrated modern progress, boasting about new industries and schools. But beneath that image of growth, a hidden reality persisted, one never appearing in newspapers or official records. In the back rooms of taverns and on farms outside the city, young black lives were still treated as property. Outsiders passing through might see only the grand houses along Green Street, never realizing that just a few streets away, entire communities lived under the constant fear of losing their children. The practice of using human beings as currency was carefully concealed, whispered about but never acknowledged by those in power. This dual reality made Augusta a city of contradictions. White residents spoke of freedom and Southern pride, yet the freedom promised to black families was a fragile illusion. Local authorities maintained a facade of law and order, while silently allowing crimes that mocked justice itself. Even national laws meant to protect freedmen were powerless here, smothered by a culture that preferred silence. The year 1915 is remembered as part of the Progressive Era, a time when America claimed to be moving forward. But for many in Augusta's black neighborhoods, progress meant nothing. Their lives were trapped in a hidden system the outside world refused to see. Legacy and memory. The pain of those years did not disappear. Survivors carried their stories into old age, telling them quietly to children and grandchildren. In neighborhoods like Turpin Hill and Sand Hills, elders recalled nights when sons never returned from town or when daughters were taken. These memories became part of family histories, passed down not in books but in hushed conversations. For many decades few dared to speak publicly. The fear of retaliation lingered long after the practice itself faded. Yet memory is powerful. By the mid-20th century, younger generations began piecing together the truth, connecting whispered family stories with the larger history of slavery's afterlife. They realized what happened in Augusta was part of a pattern stretching across the South. This legacy still matters. It reminds us that freedom is not simply declared by law. It must be protected by justice. The stories of those traded in taverns show how systems of power can disguise slavery in new forms, hiding exploitation behind contracts, debts, or even casual games. Remembering this history is an act of resistance in itself. The memory of Augusta's hidden slavery lives on as testimony. It is a warning that silence enables injustice and that the fight for dignity must never be abandoned. By telling these stories today, we give voice to those who were silenced a century ago, ensuring they are not forgotten.